Okay, I hope that this will be the last little bit of the reading, the final part, but if something goes wrong, then I'll have to do another part. This is part 5 of Fair Science, the story of Dr. Rusha, and I'm going to pick up a little bit, I think, where I left off on the last part. Hopefully this will work out okay. I did read ahead so that I should be able to read a little smoother, and I added some more notes. It seems like every time I go back, I add something to clarify it and try to fix it a little bit more. This is a very rough draft, but I wanted to read it, and when I got to the end, I had that warm, fuzzy feeling. I felt good about this story. I've written a couple stories that I really like, and this is one of them, so I wanted to be sure to get it recorded. Okay, so let's see here. A door opened to the drainage chamber. They stepped inside. The water was encasing them. There was a swoosh, and the water was drained in that area so they could get out from under the seat. Once all clear, the chamber moved upward like an elevator. This is kind of a little review. Then the door opened, and a room set up much like a lecture hall. Upward like an elevator. And then the door opened to a room set up much like a lecture hall, and the green room was located in the back. Please, have a seat, the doctor invited. He then let out a sigh and asked, "Okay, how many of you want to live here?" Ha 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 ha, he laughed with an evil laugh, followed by, "No, seriously, what do you think? Living here, you won't have to go to bed at a set time, you don't have to eat all your veggies, unless you want to be a vegetarian and live in the vegetarian section. You won't even get grounded. Of course, you can't leave, but you don't have to. You stay in your own handmade shelter. When living in a shelter, you don't have to clean your room, other than from dirt and some bugs, maybe. It's like camping out. It'll be fun. What do you say?" Afraid to speak or be the first to say how they really felt, all three of them slowly nodded no. Susan then spoke up with a very negative attitude. "Who would want to live here?" Dr. Rusha knelt down in front of where she was sitting and said softly, "Me. It's part of my home. The best part, actually." Just then a bird flew in from the back and pooped on his head, as if on cue. He said, "Well, some parts are the best parts." "Okay, kiddies, the final subject," announced Dr. Rusha. "Is this a final exam?" asked Susan. Dr. Rusha just looked over her head and addressed people who were not even there. "All of those in the back of the class, please pay attention. I don't want to have to fail you. You three, all three looked over their shoulders and shrugged, realizing he was just being silly again. There was no one there. Now, as I said, here are the final pop quiz essay questions that you will only see on must-see TV. So watch closely and try to keep your eye on the nut with the ball under it." Phil shook his head, still not used to the shenanigans. Then he smiled in amusement, and Susan just folded her arms in disgust and let out a sigh. "Just tell us." "Okay, thank you for asking," Dr. Rusha said sarcastically, and went on. "Numero uno on our list. Acid rain. We shot chemicals into the sky to be captured by clouds so that we and other living things, including plant life, would be supplied with polluted water. Why? Phil answered, we couldn't survive without water. Susan joined in, yeah, even if it was or had to be polluted. The doctor turned his back on the children and faced the wall that they were facing. He gestured as if he was writing in the air on an invisible chalkboard. We can't, no, cross out, can't. We couldn't wait for it to rain. Then, turning back toward the three children with the invisible pen still in his hand, or chalk still in his hand, should be whiteboard probably. Kids don't even know what a chalkboard is, right? Am I right? Okay. Don't you see, dear children? Don't you feel? Phil, you don't hear. Susie, she rolled her eyes. You cannot taste it? Benny asked. Taste what? Dr. Rusha almost lost the little, if any, self-control he had. He jumped up on the desk and raved. The acid! The chemicals! The foreign substances! The science in everything we eat and drink and touch and feel and oh my! He jumped to the floor and ran to the back of the lecture. He threw open the lecture hall. He threw open the doors to the green room, and they watched him rip something out of the ground and rush back toward them, dropping a trail of dirt behind him. Here, taste. He held out a carrot. At first, the children were hesitant, but then each of them reached out and took a bite. Taste it, he inquired. Phil asked, taste what? Followed by Susan, I don't taste a thing. The doctor smiled and shouted, ah, but taste this, as he pulled another carrot from behind his back. Each child took a bite of the second carrot and moaned in delight and satisfaction. They all agreed. It's like candy, expressed Benny. Dr. Rusha busted out, yes, sirree Bob, it is. Wow, said Philip. So, said Susan. Dr. Rusha put his hand on Susan's head and whispered, so, she thinks unpolluted food doesn't taste as good because it's not polluted? It was almost as if he was praying for her. Phil laughed. Shut up, Filament, defended Susan. Benny interrupted. But what else? What else, Dr. Rusha? What else would taste better if it were not fed acid rain? To answer Benny, the doctor got down on his hands and knees and met eye to eye with him and acknowledged, the question, my dear Benny, is not what else would taste better. The question is what wouldn't taste better. Not having been tainted, stunted, manipulated, malnutritioned, I don't know if that's the right word, and otherwise simply messed with. Susan said, I don't think that has to do with anything. We can manufacture better resources that the earth has never produced before in the history of time. There are some farms that are growing pumpkins and even watermelons the size of a small chair. They feed their groves special man-made chemicals. Philip said, yeah, did you see the one they grew in a box so they can ship them easier and ship more and then when you open the box, You got a square-shaped melon. Awesome. They really aren't man-made chemicals. They just manipulate different elements and mix chemicals from different sources. It's awesome. The point was missed, and only Benny seemed to taste and see that the food man tampered with was far inferior to all nature. He then looked at Philip and stated, "Awesome. Who wants a square watermelon? If grown in a box, wouldn't it taste, well, kind of like wood?" The doctor lit up. "Now you're starting to perceive, and you're starting to conceive," Susan argued. "Oh, wait a minute. He's just trying to be teacher's pet." Dr. Rusha addressed her. "Susie," she corrected him once again. "It is Susan!" He then continued, "Oh, yes, forgive me. My mind isn't what it used to be. Now, Susie, do you like square fish as well?" Phil's face wrinkled up. "Yeah, like fast food fishes. Or like frozen. I always thought that was funny. When I was a little kid, well, I guess I still am a little kid, but when I was even littler kid, I wanted to catch a fish that had 4 square angles." He laughed. "Don't worry," said Dr. Brusha. "Someday you will." All three could tell he was serious, and they began to see what he meant, although Susan was not very willing to admit she was wrong. "Levies!" The kids jumped when he shouted. The good consultants and engineers with their masters and decorated degrees in Louisiana had levees built so that if there were a flood or a storm, the land would not be washed away. It was only after an extremely powerful water surge that they realized what they had done. The levees actually kept the water in rather than keeping it out. Also, my dear pointy-headed little friends, pointy-headed little friends, I don't know, wouldn't admit to this. He looked at Susan. But they also did more harm than good, because if they had not built those walls, those levees on the shore line, the land would have taken care of what was needed. The tide and washing in and out of the waves would bring with it land, leaving more than it took. Seems like the right thing to do, huh? He went on as the children were now almost afraid to say anything without being pierced with his superior knowledge. The ozone hole. You can't see it. No, 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 no. Nine, nah, nada, not possible. But it's still there. Where? Where is it? Anyone? Anyone? And anyone? Phil said cautiously. In before he could say the word sky, Dr. Rusha said, "Brilliant, bright young filament." Philip wasn't sure if he had heard the doctor making fun of his nickname or not, but at this point he wasn't about to correct him as he moved right on. "It is in the air. The air that we breathe. The whole is the air that we breathe. The whole is caused by." Oh, the air that we breathe causes the whole, I think is what I meant. Susan interrupted, and the two boys were shocked as she said, "It is caused by numerous amounts of aerosols like hairspray and deodorant, as well as pollution put off by our cars and trucks. And yeah, we know." Dr. Rusha took back over and said, "Susie, you're so sweet. You really should work on a farm. By the way, I love your hair. Please tell me later where you go. I gotta get that due." Now, Susie Q, she's right, you guys. Come on, wake up, smell the maypalm. Smell the A-bomb. Too many dollars shot into space. Not enough food to feed the human race. Put on your finest dress. The whole wide world is in distress. Stop and smell the crystal meth. Go ahead, take a deep breath. And let's not forget to stop and smell the roses and daisies that have been genetically prepared and colored for all of us to enjoy. You know, I was thinking of breaking a hole in my very own green room just to see how well all my plants and animals would do, but as I was afraid I would cut my hand on the broken glass and bleed to death. So later, I will need each one of you to please help me paint the roses red. Benny and Phil smirked at each other. They were also amused because Susan was being put in her place. Dr. Rusha continued saying, unpredictability and seemingly unrelated random things. But then they all heard him say, last but not least, chillins. The doctor brought things to his final point for now. Even firefighting natural fires is, believe it or not, Smokey Bear, not necessarily the best thing to do. Susie couldn't control herself, and Phil actually agreed with her as she argued, wait a second, Dr. Rusha. I respect you and all, but come on, firefighters are heroes, and if they didn't get wildfires under control, we would lose our extremely high-priced subdivisions and maybe even malls and stuff. Dr. Rusha scratched his head and looked up into space and said, it is the and stuff that worries me the most. I sure would miss all that stuff. I mean, it's not like the forest was here first and tried to keep us from taking over and killing it so we could all have the fun and just put trees in a circular design that wrapped around our cul-de-sac. Heck, I couldn't imagine how we'd live in the woods. Wow, scary, huh? Susan just dished out a little bit more attitude and said, I know what you're doing and saying and trying. Dr. Rusha just said, trying? I'm succeeding, not trying, Susie. The little girl lost all composure and said, I can't take it anymore. My name is Susan. Suzanne. Susan. I can't get... She couldn't barely speak. Can't you get that right, you genius? She even shocked herself and knew right away she was speaking out of place. But she was still fuming and wondering why and how anyone so smart could be so smart-mouthed. Dr. Rusha said, okay, you're on to me. Oh, Susanna, oh, won't you cry for me? I am so sorry. Please, crucify me. But can you wait at least till Friday? 'Cause I got stuff to do. At the mall and stuff. Philip said, seriously, Dr. Rusha, how could putting out fires be a bad thing for nature or science? Dr. Rusha lay down on the floor face first. He started to scoot across the ground. The children moved out of the way as he divided them and spoke. You see, down here in the forest floor, me and all my pine needle buddies and leaves and, Susanny? Susanny? What is the word? Oh, never mind. I remember. All the stuff down here on top of the dirt. We all get hot and we eventually just explode, cause we just can't take it. However, he slowly began to rise up to his feet and started waving like flames as he finished his point. We burn like hell, literally. And after we burn the hell out of our area, our our ashes are used to fertilize, are used as fertilizer. And we would never grow new and stronger if we didn't get so burned up about being left alone in the dirt where people want to pave. Benny said, I heard that. Philip said, yeah, I knew that things are foraged in the forest after natural fires. Susan's blood began to boil again, and she lashed out at Benny. You're just trying to make me look bad. Dr. Rusha comforted her by taking her hand and saying, my dear, you mustn't feel that way. They could not make you look any worse than you already do. Susie Ann, she pulled her hand away and said, okay, I've had enough. I'm leaving. The two boys and the doctor just stood there. Susan stood there too, not really knowing where to go or how to leave. I'm going to have to try my glasses because this print is smaller. Pause. Okay. Okay, now I got to get the right angle. Okay, so she didn't know how to leave, how to get out of there. Where to go or how to leave. So, Dr. Rusha, you have done nothing but treat me rude the whole time, and I will not tolerate it any longer, she said. Dr. Rusha didn't want her to go, so he said, oh, no, I am sorry. How do I, oh my, I just want you to know what I think, to understand what I have wanted more than anything that we did here today. Sorry. I hope and pray that you'll go home feeling like I did a lot more than just treat you rude. I also meant every word, I truly did, but I meant it in your best interest, dear Susan. I don't know, he's making fun of her name again. Oh, Susan. Yeah, Susan. Come again, won't you? Ah! Susan screamed in frustration. You're just a weird, freaky, mean old man. Now, Suze, I'm not old. It was then that Susan finally ran back toward the greenhouse and tried to recall how to get back through the way they came. Phil broke the seconds of silence once Susan couldn't be heard any longer. He stammered to get out. Dr. Rusha, excuse me, I don't really know how to say this, but I thought was, like, it was, like, funny and all, but, like, I think, you kind of, like, sort of, kind of, Dr. Rusha mocked him just a little bit. Spit it out, young one. Benny tried to help and said softly, with his charming British accent, I think you might have just been a little too harsh with her, Doctor. Just with her, a little, I mean. Dr. Rusha put his head in his hands and sobbed. Oh, oh, ho, 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 right," as he pretended to cry. Then he looked up and stopped the fake tears and said, "But she asked for it, didn't she, boys?" He raised his eyebrows, and both boys had to laugh. And Phil said, "She reminded me of my sister." Benny said, "I guess if she didn't stick her head out so far, it couldn't be put on the chopping block." Dr. Rusher was impressed. "Mm-hmm. Now you're flowing smooth, chop, chop, choppity, like a whitewater river rapid with a rush of salmon trying to swim up against you, so they can get up to the top." I gotta change that. I'll read what I have originally. Now you're flowing smooth, chop, chop, choppity, like a whitewater river running rapid with a bunch of salmon trying to swim up against you so they can mate on the top of your head. Phil laughed, and then Benny realized it was just so fun that it was just fine to laugh also and not try to fully understand what was said. "Men," their leader started. "Men, I want you to know you can laugh. Can laugh. Because things all around us are a joke. One big yo mama joke. I'm so glad you came here today. I do love company so much, except when I'm hungry. It's a weird phobia. I'm not afraid to have people eat with me, but I am afraid I am with okay, let me stop, sorry. Oh man, get old, okay. Glad you came, loved your company so much, but not when I'm hungry. It's a weird phobia. I'm not afraid to have people eat with me, but I am afraid of people I am with trying to eat me. Yeah, we'll leave it. That's it. So, uh, I better get some grub and maybe meet you guys again someday. Okay, I would really, really, really like that, guys. Really. Good night." The boys watched as their host walked right between the two of them, and they didn't know what to do but to follow him. Out of the room, through the greenhouse, briskly up the hallway across his lounge area, and into his kitchen. Both boys chased after him, shouting the whole way, "Wait, stop, Dr. Ruja, this can't be it, wait, no." Finally, Benny shouted, "We can't make the world any better, can we, Dr. Ruja? And neither can you." This stopped the doctor right in his tracks. He slowly turned and asked, "What did you just say?" Benny went to repeat it, but Dr. Rusha shushed him and said, "I have spent my whole life creating and inventing and not just trying, but, like I said, actually succeeding on making this world a better place for everyone. Then, one day, I saw it. I saw that the things I made that were owned by everyone now owned everyone. Yeah. I saw that the things I made that were owned by everyone were now owned everyone. What you own ends up owning you. That's what I'm trying to say. A loud door slammed. As they looked at the front door, it was Susan coming back in. She had not only entered, she nearly knocked down Mr. Myth the butler. When she slammed the door, it shattered the small glass window. "I'm back, And this is not easy for me, but Dr. Ruja, you are a gift. And I want to do something that will make this world a better place. Maybe correct the mistakes we made. Dr. Ruja just smiled and said, "It's time. Right after we eat, guys." He cleared his throat as he finished. "And girl, sorry, Susan. It's time to take everything I've shared with you and share it with those outside my home. I do hope you learned something. And if not, I hope you at least feel like you made a new friend, and that just maybe we get something out of the last few words you hear me say this day. It's time to face the crowd out there and bring this day to a close and hopefully open a new one. But first, let's eat." They enjoyed the best meal they had ever had. And then they went to meet the press. This is the last little bit. Okay. I should be able to finish it in this one, not have to do another part if the phone doesn't shut off. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's see. There was a huge stage set up in the front gateway of the doctor's house. People were waiting to hear from him and the children. What new inventions, discovery, and creations had they come up with? Did any of them win another prize? This was the most important part of the day and their experience. It was an especially hot and overcast day. Everyone gathered from miles and miles around. Every country was represented. There was not one single form of public broadcasting absent. This was when the nation, the world, practically the whole universe, stood still in one place and time to hear and convey what results took place while these three children were with the Dr. Ray Rusha. I almost messed up his name. I think I'd know it after all these years. Raymond Rusha. The Dr. Raymond Rusha. I think Raymond's better than Ray. Okay. The first words from the most respected and genius scientist, Dr. Ray Rusha, Raymond Rusha, were, Susan, "Oh, me, oh my. When will scientists stop working so science can work?" After years of studying and teaching and attempting to create things using his knowledge of science, he realized that our environment's natural science can take better care of itself without our intervention and inventions. But could he convey this to the world? He tried by saying, "There are so many scientists in the way, myself included," he announced. "I said, too many. We need no more. And those of us who exist must consider how we exist." The audience gathered there began to discuss and argue among themselves with questions of what they just heard. He continued, and the world hung on his every word. "We get in the way. We destroy amazing, self-supported ecosystems rather than discover better ways to preserve them. The air we breathe, the water we drink, our very own resources of food that we eat, we think they can be improved upon. We think they can be improved upon? Why must we try to make things bigger, better, or in some way try to improve what is already perfect if it is just left alone? We are forging a rapid death, not just a slow motion suicide. You taught these up-and-coming child prodigies to not be scientists? Someone from the crowd said, desperately aiming their oversized microphone at the stage. This was followed by a mass of indistinct murmuring and muttering. May I? May I? Dr. Rusha stopped. The assembled mob before him silenced. Dr. Rusha let about 5 seconds of dead air speak for itself. Seeing if they really wanted an answer, he then went on. The word science is defined as systematic knowledge derived from observation, not from obstruction. We are all to study, grasp a branch, just a branch, not even the mass or the roots, the tip of the iceberg, if you will, a branch of knowledge that systematizes facts. Puts facts in order. Principles and methods. As scientists, we attempt to develop a skill or technique in dealing with the biological, chemical, and physics that make up everything around us, both seen and not seen, things we feel and the presence of forces we don't feel, what is smelled and that which is indistinctible. What we hear is not all that is to be or can be heard. There are wondrous substances that we don't even taste when using our very own tongue and taste buds. We are but stewards of what can be given or what has been given to us. Stewards that may study but not destroy. Everyone was completely dumbfounded and speechless as Dr. Rusha further built his case. We did not invent or create the trees. We didn't even really discover them. The rainforest was just there. We decided to use the limited resources of wood to make paper. I'm sure all of us love paperwork. Oh, how we need more paperwork to write down and record and document things that are right in front of our faces. Can't we take the time to read nature? Do we love where paper comes from enough to work at using our minds and human abilities to extend to the extent that we do not have to manufacture any more paper? Most of us email, but demand triplicate hard copies or print out what is digitally saved. He could almost read the minds of those standing before him, awestruck. He could tell they were just starting to understand, but he had almost lost them at this point. Let me make things a little plainer. Let's simplify. Explain. Trees, like these surrounding us now, they make it possible for us to breathe. They produce oxygen. Let us also not forget that they are also homes to countless amounts of life forms, some so microscopic we cannot even see or imagine. We could not live without them. They, the trees, and the life in them, and all that is produced by them, are far more important and abundant than anything we could ever write on another piece of paper. Some hung their heads in shame. Some gasped, never considering these simple facts. Not one soul was left uncomprehending what we Not one soul was left uncomprehending what we have all that we have all been so selfish. Benny, the least expected to succeed that day, stood up and used the loudest outdoor voice he had. "We think we own..." He hesitated a moment, surprising even himself with his own zeal and bold self-confidence. He took a step forward and raged into the microphone. "We think we are in control of the elements of science. The fiber that our inner core is made of and sustained by. The truth is, natural science, owns and provides, let alone allows us to survive." He looked back at Dr. Rusha. They exchanged smiles of assurance. A very brave but small-time unknown figure of the local press shouted from below stage level, "What should we do?" Another voice was heard asking, "What do we do?" Before Dr. Rusha, or anyone else for that matter, answered, the top newscaster, from the World Satellite Resources, spouted, "Are you mad? What can we do at this point? Are you asking all of us, the entire planet, to stop living life as we know it?" Dr. Rusha leaned into the microphone and said, "Oh, you'll live, but like you said, you won't be living the way you have been, not living as you know it now." Another top television company was covering this along with all the others, and you could hear the familiar lead anchor person shout, "You want us all to live like the Amish?" A few people chuckled. The answer came within seconds as Phil jumped up, almost knocking Dr. Rusha off the stage. Phil introduced himself briefly, and he reminded them what he invented, and he then said, "To my knowledge, I don't know any Amish people who mix chemicals of natural science to enhance their lives. When we look at the grass, the sun, insects, the elements, all of these things around us, and think about what they have to offer without us causing an endangerment or extinction, then we will be living a life that is simple, healthier, and even more loving." Philip started giving a personal example. "I love horses. I love horses. Man, do I. Ask anyone who knows me." Dr. Rusha looked at his staff, and they were all rolling their eyes. They exchanged a nonverbal sign, wondering if Phil should be taken down now. Mr. Miff read his boss like a book, and they both let Phil have his say. Phil went on, "But as much as I love my horses, I don't plan on relying on them as my only mode of transportation. Today, Benny here showed me how we can get where we need to go without using gas, oil, or things that pollute the air." Dr. Rusha pointed out that, he's still talking. Dr. Rusha pointed out that the invention I discovered, which again was how to light my stables and home, mixing chemicals that are not synthetic or man-made, that I made a mistake. and we have to make it safer. We don't have to use candles, but we don't have to use candles. We can use this. Phil then sat back down behind the lectern. Susie couldn't resist and stood and shouted, "Yeah, it is a pos." Dr. Rusha held up his hand to stop her, but then he motioned to her not to stop, but to step up behind the mic so everyone could hear. Once at the mic, she was still yelling. The speakers could only take so much, so her voice was slightly distorted as she cried, "If you found out that you can use power and use other modern appliances, but could use them wiser, don't you think it would be an excellent, most awesome way of life and living or way of living for all of us? Like for all of us. I just want to say that with my invention, it is possible. But, I can feel Dr. Rusha's eyes staring through the back of my head, so I have to confess, I didn't invent the air-powered air conditioner or the water-powered washing machine." Everybody gasped. Well, we all just use what comes naturally. Naturally. Two of nature's strongest forces are wind and water. They've always been around. We've just learned to harness them and use them for an alternative and extended form of power, like we're doing with the sun. It is possible for us to have power without pollution. Susan bowed her head, did a little curtsy, and went back to her seat. Dr. Rusha stepped back up and said, "Thank you, Susie." He looked back at her and smiled. From that day on, everyone called her Susie, and she ended up preferring it. The most amazing thing took place next. The President of the United States of America stood up from out of the center of the crowd. Many didn't know he was even there. He was in disguise, and his Secret Service men were surrounding him. Everyone recognized his voice from the first word on as he said, "You think you can survive and that the world's economy will survive with a plan like this? Do you realize that would affect our allies?" No one was sure if these were rhetorical questions or if the answers to every one of these questions was just no. Benny put a hand on the doctor's right shoulder and tugged him away from the center of the stage. He then stepped up in front of the mic, right while the president was still drilling them. Benny waited a second or two. He had no intention of interrupting the president. When there was a slight pause, Benny simply jumped in with a common sense reminder. We, humans I mean, we didn't always live in brick homes. No disrespect, but as simple as that sounds, doesn't it help you realize that there are only a few things that we really need? Food, drink, sleep, modest shelter, and love. But we are all fooled and spoiled into thinking that what we need is actually only just what we want. Disagree with us if you wish. Yeah, wait a minute. Okay, yeah. We know now we can live self-sufficient on our own land. We don't need all the other countries, and they don't need us. We are human, and the scientific creations and inventions that have been around since the beginning of time are more than enough to meet our every need. Oh, Dr. Rusha smirked and kept himself from laughing out loud as Benny went on with this. Um, we are human, and the scientific creations and inventions that have been around since the beginning of time are more than enough to meet our every need. Father God created Mother Earth. Is that blasphemy? Then crucify us if you must. Dr. Rusha snorted a little bit, remembering that he said something similar to that earlier. There was a brief second of silence. The president then asked one last question. You're recommending that we go back to being savages, living like cavemen or primitive people in tents, huts, small homes, or modify the homes we have with the use of scientific theories to make our planet a better place to live? How can we live better if we are not living better, progressing as civilized intellectuals, using every resource we can get our hands on? You propose, Dr. Rusha, that we use nature's resources in place of the incredible inventions you yourself developed? Dr. Rusha, his entire staff, and the three students smiled and non-verbally answered with an unmistakable nod yes of their heads. Nod of their heads? Is that a given that it's yes? What happened next was started not by any of Dr. Rusha's staff, students, associates, or colleagues, but by a small voice standing in the front row looking up at the stage. The soft-spoken word, yes, began to spread through the entire crowd and was repeated over and over until everyone there, as well as everyone watching or listening to the broadcast, joined in as one in the chant, yes, yes, yes. And with that being said, broadcasted to every possible destination, Dr. Rusha tipped his head, turned, and walked off the stage. The feeding frenzy and acceptance of what took place that day was more fulfilling and remarkable than any moment in history. What took place that day spread throughout the world, and the words were followed by actions to the end of the earth to help prevent the earth from coming to an end. The end. That's it. Still has some work to be done, but